Hi, Scott Lewis here from Lewis Studios, and I just wanted to do this quick video to help people see the way that Gravity Forms on a WordPress website can be integrated with Little Green Light constituent management system for nonprofits using the Gravity Forms Webhooks add-on. The Webhooks add-on is available as part of the Elite subscription to Gravity Forms. And ultimately, that level of subscription provides several useful things, including payment gateway add-ons as well, like Stripe and PayPal here, and some of the email integrations as well. And so it tends to be a affordable package compared to the alternatives, like using something like Zapier to do your integration with Little Green Light, which has an annual fee. And so if you look at this, the one thing we have to do before we get started is make sure we have the Gravity Forms Webhooks add-on installed and activated, which we do here. So I'm going to go ahead and close this tab. We'll go look at this form. So I have an online donation form, and I've gone to settings and I've gone to webhooks, and now we're looking at the webhooks setting. And in the form, we need to give it a request URL. That's actually going to come from Little Green Light. I'll show you where that comes from over there. I'm not showing one here because it has a secret key embedded in it, and I don't want to expose the key to my Little Green Lights account for that particular webhook. But I'll show you how you do it and how you plug it in. And then you leave the request method at post, the request format at JSON. JSON just is shorthand for JavaScript Object Notation. If you want to know what that is, you can search for it, but you don't need to know to make this work. The request headers, you don't need to do anything there. When you get to the request body, I change this to select fields, and I select the fields I want. I give them a key. These are called key value pairs. So the key is what is the name of the field, and the value is where do we get the value of the field from. So these keys I've typed in, and the values are typically coming from a field in the form, but sometimes they're coming just as static text, or sometimes they're coming as a combination of static text and one or more fields from the form. So I'll show you how that works as we go through this. But you can see I've just named my fields with names that'll help me figure out what to map them to when I get to the Little Green Light side. So my gift amount is coming from my donation total field on my form. The fund is static text. That's the account number of the individual donor fund on our accounting system for this nonprofit. The newsletter field, whether that's selected or not, will come across. The first name, last name, email, street address, etc., etc. But we get down here a little further down. Record type is another static text. We've just coded that as gift. Whether or not the donation is anonymous. But then when you get down here to external ID, right, in Little Green Light, a gift can have an external ID, just like a donor can have an external ID. And with donors, we usually use external IDs as a troubleshooting tool when we first import all our donors from somewhere else when we're implementing Little Green Light. Well, if we're importing our gifts from somewhere else, we can run into some of the same need to be able to easily match things up. So what I do is I just stick web donation underscore, and then I use the merge tag for my form ID, my Gravity Forms form ID underscore, and then the merge tag for my form entry ID. So that gives me a unique identifier that'll tell me this came from my web form, and it clarifies which form it came from and which entry ID it was for that form. So if there's anything that's not lining up right or working right with one donation or many donations, I now can go try to match up what I see in Little Green Light with what I see in the form entry records here in the website, so I can try to figure out what went wrong. Hopefully nothing goes wrong, but if it does, it's nice to be able to tie things off. And that's an example of using merge tags in a sort of a formula for the value we're going to send over to Little Green Light. Then we have the rest of our fields here. And then at the bottom, we have a condition. This particular webhook is for donors that chose to pay by credit card when they made their donation. So if the how would you like to pay field is credit card, this webhook will execute. If it's not credit card, that means they chose to pay by check. I have a different webhook for that. That's not going to send in a gift. It's going to send in a pledge to Little Green Light. And then in Little Green Light, when the office receives the check, they can go in and change that, and mark that pledge as a gift at that point, and put in the check at that point in time. So we have our form settings set up here in the Gravity Forms side of things. Now let's go look at Little Green Light. So here we are in Little Green Light, and we're just in my test account here. This is not the account that actually goes with that form we were looking at, but I've set up a sample integration here that maps to those same fields so we can look at how that works. And it's mostly already set up to save time, but there's a couple things I need to go tweak in there. And so we'll take a look at that as we go through. So I'm going to go to Settings. I'm going to go to Integration Settings. I'll go down to Custom Integrations. And here's my website donation form settings. And I'm going to just edit that. And here's my fields. So I've typed in the names of all my fields from the form, from those keys in that left-hand column, each on its own line. And then Little Green Light added a record ID field at the end. You don't have to add that yourself. They'll do that. So I'm going to cancel because those are already all set. And next we want to look at the field map. So the first part was telling Little Green Light what fields to expect when the webhook comes in. Now we're going to tell it what to do with those fields when they come in. You'll also notice there's a checkbox here that says Require Review. And that checkbox essentially means that it's going to go into the integration queue and wait for someone to approve it. If you don't want to have to approve these, you can uncheck that box and they'll automatically go all the way through. But let's go look at our field map. And so here is our field mapping for this particular integration. And you can see I have do not update constituent name information. I've made the decision with this form that the information we have in Little Green Light will always be the more reliable. And if something doesn't match in the constituent name, they probably made a typo on my donation form. So I'm not going to override what's already in Little Green Light with what's on the donation form. I've also said to match on both email address and name. Right? And so that's to try to make sure that we have the right person. If we can't get a match, it's going to try to create a new record. When you review your integration queue, if you've left it to require review, you can always go in and override that and choose a constituent if you think you know who it belongs to and you can see that it just didn't match because some information was wrong. And then in the gift creation preferences here, I said to ignore $0 or blank gift records. And that's just an extra safety measure in my mind to protect against spam form entries. So I have some things happening on the website to try to keep spammers from filling out and submitting my forms. But if they manage to do it anyway, and the gift gets over here that has no value, I'm not going to put that gift into Little Green Light. And then you'll notice down here, first of all, you can select from a template. So if you have multiple integrations that are all going to be very similar, when you set one up, you can save it as a template, and then you can recall it from a template to get a head start on the next one. In this case, we're just going to go through the mappings here. So here's our fields that we had in that left-hand column, the keys in Gravity Forms, right? Gift amount, fund, newsletter, etc. And on the right, we've chosen which fields in Little Green Light we want to map those to. And so most of these are straightforward. Gift amount mapped to gift amount, fund mapped to fund name, newsletter goes to communication tags, first name goes to first name, etc. Those are all good. Date is going to go to the gift date. The record type, which was just that static text of gift, if you recall, in Gravity Forms, is going to go to the gift type field, right? If they check the anonymous box, we're going to go into the gift is anonymous field and set that. The appeal name, the external gift ID. The tribute field we actually don't need. That just says whether or not it is a tribute. But what really matters is the rest of these fields. If it was a tribute, they're going to have filled in these other fields. If not, they'll be blank. And so if they're filled in, they'll get populated into Little Green Light. Tribute to is who's being honored. The tribute notify to field was who do we notify about this, the recipient of the tribute. Their email, the message that's going to go to them goes in the dedication field. Their address goes in their address field. And then I just happened to put these in an order where payment type came after the tribute information instead of up with the gift information. But here's our payment type down here, and that's going to map into our payment type. So that's how we map the fields. Now, one thing I should mention here is this is a pretty straightforward example. You can try to do more elaborate things if you wanted to. And one example might be if someone was if you're paying a credit card processing fee, you might actually have a formula-driven field in your Gravity form that calculates the processing fee and sends that over in a field here, so that you get, and it also sends another custom field, which is the donation total minus the processing fee, so that you could set the deposited amount separately from the gift amount. I didn't take that step in here. We actually, with this particular client, we don't track that in Little Green Light. We track that in QuickBooks. So it's not that critical that it go in here, but if you need that in your record keeping, you could do that. Or you could, when you get your credit card, when you get your bank statement, you could go through and reconcile all of those and add the deposited amounts to them separately from the gift total amounts that are already there from this integration. So there's a couple of things to think about with that. At any rate, once we have everything mapped, we can save this. And then what I usually do is I'll do a test donation. And the way the test donation would show up, which is a video for another day, is you'd go over to your integration queue and you'd see unsaved records here, assuming that you left the checkbox for review checked. And you could look at them and match them up to the, make sure they're matched up properly, make sure they look good, and then accept it. Once it's accepted, you would then go to your fundraising gifts and you'd go look at the giving, and then you'd go look at the gift there to make sure everything looked right. If everything looked right, you could then delete that gift if it was just test data. If it didn't look right, you could actually come back here and go to your saved tab, and you could undo that integration save so that it would come back out, and you could then reject it or delete it, or you could edit it in Little Green Light in the queue and then try it again, and then go correct what you think is wrong in either the integration settings here or the webhook settings over in Gravity Forms. But once that's working, now you don't have to retype any of that data that came in through your website form into Little Green Light. You don't have to pay for a third-party service like Zapier to do your integration. And frankly, doing this integration in Zapier is about the same work as we just saw here. And so if you don't need Zapier for other things, which could make it very valuable, then just the Webhooks add-on for Gravity Forms may be the piece that is going to solve your need. I hope this was helpful, and let me know if you need more information.